Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of Open Books with Alana and Erin, two female leaders modernizing the accounting space. Today, we're going to have a great topic.
Yeah.
One that kind of harkens back to a couple of our other episodes. We talked about it in our imposter syndrome episode,
Yep.
in our change management one. Today, we're going to talk about the growth mentality.
Yeah.
What that is to both of us, how we see it in our team members, kind of how do we foster it in our team. It's going to be pretty exciting.
It is, because also traditional accounting doesn't always lend itself to a growth mentality. And the interesting thing is, I think sometimes when you see someone with a growth mindset, they're like the oddball in an accounting firm.
Yes.
Where in other industries, they're like, bring that over here. Geez, and in accounting, sometimes it's not welcomed.
I mean,
right?
We talked about it with change management.
Yes. Yep.
Definitely in your more traditional firms.
For sure.
Definitely not welcome.
Yeah.
But the industry as a whole has
Yeah.
definitely been changing. We've seen change.
Yep.
You can see that change and that growth mindset
Yeah.
really coming to the forefront, I think, in the industry.
Yeah, totally.
As kind of the traditional accountants retire out of the industry or retire totally or just retire out of the industry to go to private.
Yep.
I think we'll see it more and more. And it's pretty exciting.
It's so exciting. Yep.
So growth mentality.
Yeah.
What do you think growth mentality is? Or maybe the better question is, how do you see it in your team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think to first, how do I see it in my team is to define what it looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
I view growth mentality as just a mindset of someone, right? Of welcoming that growth, looking for growth, and I think truly just not being scared of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it can bring better things than what it might be leaving behind. So how do I see it in my team? I think through conversations of team members thinking beyond, something at hand. They're thinking about generally the bigger picture. They're looping in things that they've experienced, on other clients or with other technology or what might be happening in that client's industry. So I feel like when I see it in my team members, it's something greater than what we're really talking about, is I think how I would boil it down.
Yeah.
They're really pushing themselves to see it more than just the facts at hand.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Definitely that. I think it starts off as taking the things they've learned from one client and applying it to the other.
Yep.
And I feel like that's like the bud.
Yes.
Right? Kind of starting to grow and start to blossom. And it's really satisfying and just I feel so proud of my team when I've seen them start from just understanding their clients to applying what they've learned across each client and then starting to think proactively about hey, we had this issue with this client 5 months ago. I don't want that to happen again. As we're getting into tax time, we are remembering now all the things that we wanted to do and implementing them so we have a better tax time, and just that little growth mindset of doing that, applying those lessons learned, and just being open to the experience is so huge.
And I think, like you said, it's exciting to see that in our team. And I always, what is so exciting for me is there's definitely times in a growth mindset where it gets very uncomfortable for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be either because imposter syndrome is starting to sneak in, the change is really setting in, and you're hitting that change cycle of this isn't so fun right now. But there's always this discomfort piece with it for a little bit. And I think some of your strongest employees, you see them start to hit that discomfort. And I think you have to take that excitement and just keep going. It's uncomfortable right now, but the best thing is once you can get past that, And I bring that up because I don't love seeing my team be in discomfort, but I know that when I see them hit that point that I'm like, you are on the edge. Like you are
Mhm.
so close to turning the corner.
Right.
Like just stick with it. And that growth is right on the other side. And
Mhm.
that's like such a pivotal moment for the
Right.
team. And I get so jacked, even though I know they're going through discomfort and I'm like, I'm there to support them.
Yeah.
But I get so jacked up when I see them at that point.
It's so exciting.
It's so
Because
exciting.
you know just
Yep.
that little bit
Oh,
more.
yes.
And then they get to, they kind of come over that peak.
Yes,
that
and that's
hurdle,
what it
and then
is.
they're able to look back and be
Yes.
like, oh, look how much I've grown as
Yes.
an individual
Yep.
or in my profession or whatever it is.
Yes.
But it's just so exciting.
Yep.
And I don't know, heartwarming.
It is. And you get to celebrate with them once they reach that point
Yeah.
because they're now able to recognize what they've just
Mhm.
done, which is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So, we've very much gone through change ourselves, right? We both, I would say, have a pretty strong growth mindset. Walk me through an example. So, I guess to back up, all growth, right, still does come with frustration, right, at
Right.
times.
Yep.
And I think, to stay true to our podcast, we have to bring that, right, to the episode. So can you walk me through a time where, while we both are, very much in a growth mindset, walk me through a time when it got a little tough though?
Yes. I mean, of course, there
Yeah.
are many, many examples of uncomfortable growth.
Yeah.
I remember, and this was, I want to say 6 to 7 years ago, but in actuality, it's probably like 8 to 9 years
Yeah.
ago because COVID just like took away
Zapped
3
the time.
years.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time our mentor
Mhm.
came up to me and another leader at the firm, talking specifically about our payroll process.
Yeah.
Because we knew we were going to have to make a software change. The software we were using was changing and discontinuing in a way. We knew we needed a new solution, and he came up and approached us about potentially selling off the payroll practice.
Oof.
And
That'll
so he was
hurt.
talking to
Yeah.
Paychex and like all the different
Yep.
software, the vendors. And my gut reaction was, how could you?
Yeah.
Never.
Yep.
I am leaving right now.
Packing my bags,
Yeah.
man.
See you later. And that is because even though like I love technology
Yep.
and I really do typically embrace change, I had really tied that whole payroll persona
Yeah.
into how I saw my own value.
Oh, sure.
So that was a huge blow.
Yeah.
Or that's how I perceived it, as
Right.
a blow to
Yep.
me as a person of,
Yep.
oh, they don't value the services we
Yeah.
provide. We're just going to sell it off and blah, blah, blah. And we had more conversations about it because
Yep.
Tony is amazing.
Right.
And he wanted us to understand from his perspective why he would bring that up.
Right.
He still continues to bring it up and tease us about our initial reaction, keeping us humble, I suppose.
Oh, man.
But he was great about helping us understand it. And looking
Yeah.
back, like, we needed to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But it really opened my mind up to, like, this change is good, could be good.
Yeah.
We didn't end up going that direction. But having the conversation was really important. And
Yep.
it really kind of brought home to me that we need to be thinking about stuff beyond just the immediate.
Yeah.
We
sure.
need to be looking forward. We need to be thinking about how things are impacting our team now, but also in a year, in
Yep.
3 years, in 5 years. We need to be thinking about that and how we're going to grow and
Yep.
change. So it was hard learning.
Yeah.
Especially when he still teases us about it. But, it's
well.
with love.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. It is.
How about your like first dealings
Yeah.
with having to really become that growth mindset?
Yeah, and mine kind of originates back to when I first came into public accounting. I came from private into public, but when I came into public, I just set down the traditional tax route,
Right.
because that's kind of what was laid out for me, right? Not knowing anything about advisory, but then like as my beginning years kind of went on, and you have a little more free time when you're first starting out. And so I was like seeing what's going on in advisory, and all of a sudden I was like, do I not like tax anymore? Like, am I not wanting to retire as a tax person? And so realizing, like, pushing myself of like, but the tax is what's set out for me. Like, it's already developed. Like, this is where I'm headed. It was my first time of like, maybe I want to grow, not where I thought I was going to go. Right. And so it was more, all internal, I would say, of questioning my growth mindset of like, is this really which way I'm going to go? Because there was so much growth happening in advisory at that time, that it was like, that seems to fit with who I am and like where I see, myself. But it was a lot of like, am I okay with this internally?
Yeah.
I mean, I did it and I never looked back. I love it. Right. But it was a lot of like internal questioning of my growth and like first identifying that I wanted to have a growth mindset, which was huge.
I think it's very easy for people coming into the profession, especially if they are going the Big Four route, to feel very pigeonholed into these very specific careers. And then I personally feel about the Big Four that it doesn't give you a lot of space to even think about growing.
For sure.
And so if there was any advice I could give to a new person coming into the public accounting space, it'd be like, go work for a small firm. Go work for a firm of your size or of our size, where you get exposed to more things and you can really see what is going to fit your strengths and how you want to grow. Because I feel like at those very large firms, it's so structured and rigid that you don't get exposed to anything else.
Totally. And just to add on to that, what I would say is, not only is it like the growth mindset within the firm, but I think especially like in advisory and a mid-level or, smaller firm, you are working with clients that have insane growth mindsets. Like they have their business here and they want to get here in 5 years. And I think being able to work with clients who like really define that growth mindset, I mean, is one of the best parts of my day. That it like matches up with, what I drive to, have for myself as well.
That's a huge, huge point you just made. Working with the clients that mirror that growth mindset. Is something that I think oftentimes we take for granted. Because it's just what we get to experience on the day-to-day and realize that not all people get to experience that and see that excitement all the time. And we have some tough times, but that just working in that space is so dynamic and things can go wrong, but things can also go really great. And it is fun. It is not your boring data entry accountant, traditional. It's so great and so much fun. That I don't think I don't think you get that at the larger firms. They kind of miss out.
I see your point.
So talking about growth mentality, do we always have to be in growth mentality, or does our team need to always be in growth mentality? What do you think about that?
And that's a good question. I think for how I see it, not everyone has a growth mindset, just naturally. It takes all kinds of people to create a really effective team. So I think having everyone with a growth mindset won't challenge that mindset from time to time, right? Like I think those who maybe are on the lower end of a growth mindset, they help challenge like, what you're trying to do, and that's okay. But I think for those people who don't naturally just crave growth and change, I don't think that they need to always be in growth mode, truly, because I think it's also exhausting for them, and you kind of have to give them a break, from that growth. So I think, you have to have it to a certain level, especially like in leadership and where you want to get to
Right.
be. But I think we just can't assume that everyone's going to be 100% growth
Mhm.
100% of the time, because it's also a very taxing thing from time to time, right? So everyone needs a break
Yep.
routinely, I would say.
Yeah.
What about you?
So I think I'm a little different.
Yeah.
Where I think everyone is in some kind of growth mentality,
Okay.
typically at all times.
Yeah.
It's where that growth is focused.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So some people want to focus on growing their relationships with their family.
Yeah.
And this is something that one of my like takeaways from my team
Yeah.
was back when I first came into the firm. I worked with a lot of older women
Yeah.
who were in their mid to upper 50s, I would say.
Okay.
They were much more focused on growing the relationships with their grandkids,
Yeah.
with their families. They were not interested in growing at the firm.
Okay. Yeah.
So they were content with what was happening at the firm. I was not. I was this young whippersnapper coming
Right.
in, like
Shaking
rabble
it up.
rousing.
Right.
Yeah. And I wasn't content with how they were doing
Yep.
their work. But I didn't realize at the time
Yeah.
that they were just focused on growing other relationships.
Yeah.
It was not important to them to grow their work
Yeah.
anymore, which like
Yep.
I get. You hit
Yep.
that age, go for it.
Yep.
But that took me so long to be okay with and to realize. So I think now my viewpoint of growth is we're all growing in some way, and we most people have some kind of intentional growth, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah.
It's just how it's focused.
Yeah. And that's a good point. It makes me think
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we might have to do a follow-up of this
We might.
in a couple months.
Yeah. It's really interesting seeing how growth can play out between your team members as
Yeah.
well. Because you may have one that's really just working on production and
Yep.
they just want to be a producer.
Yeah.
And they're just growing their efficiencies. Like
Totally.
right? They're trying
Yeah.
to be as efficient as possible so they can be done as soon as possible so they can go do other stuff.
Yeah.
Where you have other people who maybe want to lead or move into advisory or something like that. So they're growing in that way. But I don't want us to discount those that want to grow outside of work,
Totally. Yep.
because a more well-rounded employee
Yep.
is better for all of us,
Yes.
really.
So important.
So yeah, a little bit of a different
Yeah.
take on the growth, but specifically talking about growth at work, I think we do see ebbs and flows in people's growth mindset, just naturally,
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what's important is, and you kind of spoke to this, like being the leader of a team, you do, have to help identify like where your team is wanting to grow. Because if you're trying to push someone totally out of their comfort zone, like you're not going to get, the results for anyone, and they're going to be unhappy. So it's important to like work within, where they see themselves as well.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting a lot of times in public accounting, and I think we've talked about this before, is we take someone who's technically very good at their job and we're like, well, naturally, the next step is for you to lead all of these people, right? And maybe not always having all the tools needed, but also because it seems like the natural next step, because that's what's been done. That's not always in the wheelhouse of that person,
Yeah.
right? And that may not be where they want to grow.
Yeah. And
So,
unfortunately, with the way that traditional accounting, and I would say a lot of industries altogether,
I
like,
agree. Yeah.
most people see their earning potential
Yes.
in leadership, whether they have the yearning for it or if they're just looking to increase their earnings.
Yeah.
So making sure that we're identifying where people want to grow, not just because they're wanting a paycheck,
Yes.
but that they're actually going to be happy in
Yep.
it. It's a conversation we've been having at the firm recently
Yeah.
about team members who do really good in production and
Yep.
they're happy there. How do we make sure that we're compensating appropriately
Yes.
for it?
Yeah.
Because if they're happy there and they're getting their work done, they're, doing everything that they need to, we want to compensate for that.
Yeah.
If they don't want to lead, we don't want to force them into being a leader, because that's not going to be great for anyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, really identifying where they want to grow and what's best for them, or having them kind of self-realize what's best for them.
Yeah, I think that's the ticket.
While also knowing that may change in the future.
Totally. Yeah, it's not a life sentence, right? Yeah. That doesn't mean that.
How do you, if you have a team member who is really struggling with growth, or even finding that growth mentality, growth mindset, how do you approach that?
That's a good question. Especially, I think we see this maybe with like new employees, who maybe aren't coming from such a growth focused firm, or, current employees too. I think we see it. I think it's important to start communicating about growth and helping them like see more than just the issue at hand. So like showing my perspective on growth, and like communicating that with them so that they can kind of help see it. But then I also think it's really important when you start to see some, like you said, baby growth, celebrate it so hard.
Yeah.
Like really, show
lean
them.
In.
Yes, totally lean into them, and like, show them that's great what you just found, type of thing. What about you?
About the same, nurturing those small victories, but also straight up asking them, what are they interested in? In our last episode, I mentioned talking to one of my team members about figuring out where they wanted to be in a year and giving them some time to figure it out. I think that's pretty important, just the time aspect, nurturing them, but then also recognizing that not everyone is going to think their success looks the same way that I see their success.
Yeah.
So kind of like taking that step back, looking at it from different angles. But very, very much the same, like nurturing, supporting. I mean, really that's what we want to do. And I think what servant leadership is all about.
I totally agree.
Providing that support and structure that people can be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said about, where do they see themselves? And I think having them communicate, like, what makes up your day in 5 years? Like, what are you wanting to do?
Yeah.
And we've been at our firm kind of similar to what you guys have been doing, but talking through what do next steps look like for certain people who, the next step is probably not people management. So what does their next step look like? And maybe is it a combination of things? Like, it's not just one role that they fill. Maybe they're kind of split roles doing a couple different things, and then other people are split covering other pieces, right? So I think we're really trying to reimagine what it looks like to keep that person growing at the firm.
Yeah.
What can we bring to them?
I like that kind of hybrid-y split thing. It also exposes them to different things, helps them get an idea of what they like doing something like that more permanently. Or I really don't want a person to feel as if they make a decision to go one way, that they're stuck with it.
I agree.
I want them to be able to grow into that and realize, hey, this works for me, or hey, this really doesn't work for me. And then kind of change their growth trajectory. But yeah, that's a great idea. I think I might have to do something similar, a little bit hybrid-y. Let them kind of drive and test out the waters.
Yeah. Well, and I think that also helps to test things out, because then they're not 100%, filling that role. And so let's say, in a year they're like, no, I'm done with this type of thing. Then it's easier, I guess, to kind of transition and kind of shuffle people around so that everyone is kind of fitting the dynamic that they see their day having. I think is really important.
I like that also, in that it gives people time. And I think that's one of the most important things that we as leaders can do to help someone move in their growth mindset. Is giving them the time to learn, go down rabbit holes in what they're interested in. Again, kind of going back to that more well-rounded employee / individual, but giving a person time to test out new things,
Yeah.
new areas that they haven't done in the past, I think shows that not only are we going to talk about this, but we're also going to give you this time
Yeah.
to do this. And it,
Yep.
because accounting is so like selling your time,
Right.
I think that shows the large investment that we're willing to make into those employees because we want them successful.
Yeah. And I think to your point, public accounting, traditional public accounting,
Yes.
doesn't always celebrate those moments of
Right.
employees going down the rabbit hole. And I think, to be fair, sometimes those are coaching moments of, well, we have a deadline tomorrow. Maybe not the best, not the best time.
Mhm.
Love the results. Not the best time. So maybe there's a coaching
Yeah.
moment there. But I think just historically, our industry as a whole hasn't always applauded those moments.
Mhm.
And that's actually what I would tell myself early on in my career, is to look for a growth mindset of a firm. It was never
Yeah.
even a consideration for me.
Mhm.
Like, it was just about more numbers, of the firm and what the career path looked like.
Right.
I had no idea that firms may have different levels of a growth mindset,
Mhm.
nor did I really even know what that was
Right.
and how it pertained to my career, to be honest.
Well, I think that's a lot of the issue with current accounting education.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yes.
who wants to go to school for accounting? Not that many people.
right.
But we know that there is a talent
Yes.
shortage.
Yep.
But if more people knew that you can go work for dynamic,
Yes.
exciting firms who don't spend 80 hours at the office every
Right.
week,
Yep.
who are engaged with their clients on a very close relationship level,
Yeah.
who are working to grow and change. And I wish that was expressed more in the education, because it
Yep.
really isn't. And that people come out
Yep.
with exactly what you wish you had been told, because
Yeah.
they have no clue.
Exactly. And I think maybe some of that, and we don't need to explore this at a deep level, but I think some of it too is maybe those professors who are teaching the next, wave of accountants don't always have in-depth public accounting experience. They maybe have a couple years at Big Four, or, and
Right.
it, of course, there's different levels and everything. So I'm not trying to generalize, but not always do the professors have that 20, 30 years of public accounting to be able to share those lessons,
Yeah.
to the accounting students of look for, firms that, applaud, these
Right.
specific things. So I agree. I wish there was more of that. I think
Mhm.
that would be beneficial to students graduating and going into the workforce.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Yeah.
We may have to have an episode
I
about
think-
education.
I think we're going to have to. Seems like it.
Definitely.
Yep.
Well, thanks, you guys. Thanks for listening to Open Books. We hope that by bringing forward lessons we've learned along the way during our time in the accounting industry, that others can learn from us and share in our journey as we evolve as leaders in the accounting space. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.